Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching YouTube and you see a little button down below, a little link down below, you can actually go there and ask, and you'll get to Zoom. And when you get to Zoom, you can click on the little button down below, and you'll end up inside of Mukana, and that's where you can ask questions and vote on questions and talk to everyone. Now, if you watch this and you think that you know more than us, or that you know as much as us, or you know something that we don't know, then jump in. We'd love to have you. Every new person that comes into the panel brings 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years of experience, and it just makes it easier for us to answer questions well. So we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you join us. You just have to be here early. 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time is when we do mic checks. So you just need to be by then so that we can make sure that you're ready to go. You can get here as early as 6. I can't promise anything before 6. We just kind of chit chat. We do work through technical issues and process and everything else. And so it's a good time to come check your system. You're more than welcome to come in, and we'll look at your webcam and give you a hard time. That's what we do. We're here for you to make sure that you are ready to go and be part of the conversation. So we'd love to have you jump in. The first hour, of course, is open to questions. Now, this is the long day, so we've got open questions from 7 to 8. If you've got questions for education, there's a tag for that. So you can actually go in there and tag education. So ask the question, hit return, and then go down and tag it as EDU. And that'll be easier for us to actually sort through it as we're going through that. And then the second hour is education, 8 to 9, and then 9 to we're going to a different group after that. And so 9 to 11, roughly. We'll have zoomOSC. A lot of us are learning zoomOSC together. And even if you're falling a little behind on the zoomOSC, I would highly recommend jumping in and just watching the conversation and getting your head around it. I know that I'm already thinking about the things that we're going to be doing in the company based on what we're doing here, and I'm behind. So it's definitely worth checking out. Now, I realized before the show that Bill had told me that he wasn't going to be able to be here until 8, but I forgot to line anybody up for questions. Guy, are you capable of jumping in there and running the questions?
Yeah, I just dropped the Mukana embed for YouTube. Noticed that a few people missed it the last couple of days, so I just dialed that in. So let me kick over a couple to host.
Yeah, and the reason that we're doing that, I am putting it in a little later, but I don't know exactly why I'm not putting it in right at the top of the hour. And the reason that I do that is because I figured out that I figured out when, just for everyone's background, I've been figuring out exactly when the go to live on YouTube happens. So when it's caching up for YouTube. So I start talking right when that happens, even though it hasn't shown up on YouTube. So that gets rid of all the dead space at the beginning. And then I decided to go back. So usually what happens is when there's a question, I am cutting and pasting the embed link into that area after the first question gets kicked off. So it's late, but it's not there. But we could have somebody else do that too. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's just a couple of people in the chat the last couple of days are like, "Where is it? Where is it?" I'm like,
right. I think it's
at.
I think it's right at the very beginning. So usually within the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I have it up, because when the first question starts rolling is usually when I'm cutting and pasting. Now that's only going to matter for a couple more days, because I think we're going to start streaming the participant view at 1080, hopefully tomorrow or Monday.
Yay. That'll be awesome, because some of these screen activity ones, like the frame.io one, I went to go rewatch some of it because it was so dang good. And I was like, man, I wish this was 1080, because that was just a brilliant demo.
It's why it was actually the reason that, like, I felt like that episode turned a corner, but when I went back and looked at it, I was like, So I was like, I got to get this done. So I'm in LA today, until later this morning, and then but either tomorrow or Monday, I'll try to get it off the ground. It might be Monday, and then I'm gonna try to just start streaming that from a link to AWS to end. Just because I have it, I want to test that pipeline, because then what we'll do after that is, once I get it working with YouTube and we kind of figure that process out, is when we're going to start turning up the dial on what we do. So additional graphics, as well as possibly changing the format between hour 1 and hour 2. So hour 1 is all a gallery, and hour 2 is really the individuals. And then once we start figuring that out, I'll need to leverage more of all of you to help run it. So it'll be kind of like we have to start scheduling people to do all the bits and pieces to make that all work. So anyways, that's kind of the plan. And I think that we'll, again, my goal is to try to get to a lot of those things by the end of the year. It's kind of an imaginary goal, but it's trying to see how many things we can kind of tighten up in the next month or so before we get to our 1 year anniversary. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So Bill will be the exception on the join, right? So watch for his hand.
Well, I think that he's going to come in at. I think Bill will come in right with the educators at 8. I think that's his plan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a little different here anyway. Let's jump into the questions, Guy.
Alrighty, first one's coming in from our friend Jonas Dettel in Reutlingen, Germany. How do you animate super sources, or do you just cut between them? Note, got to play with the constellation today as prep for my extreme.
I don't know of any way to animate the super sources. I mean, you might be able to. I don't ever do that. I'm always, when I'm doing it in the ATEM, the only way that I do the super sources is cut between them. So we have macros, and we'll usually that macro will push it into preview with the setting that we have, and then we animate it. I'm not saying that it's impossible. It might be, but I mean, you could theoretically animate the position, but I don't know if it would be smooth. I think that's the, trying to like hack into it to do that. Now, is that what you just did there, Guy? That's an animation? That's an animated super source?
That's a vMix, with the merge function. Yeah. Can you move to the left just a tad? There you go. Get you boxed up. Yeah. Can you give me just a snap too? I want to see how your video, because you're coming in, through this system, it would be a delay because you're coming in through Zoom. Yeah. Is it annoyingly delayed?
If you didn't know what was happening, you're definitely delayed to yourself. Yeah, absolutely. But we have that all the time. We tell people just ignore your. Yeah, so you can definitely do it in vMix, but I don't think you can do it in the ATEM itself. So, yeah, and there's one of the advantages of software switchers over the hardware switchers is that type of stuff. I do think that there are positions that you can say go to this position and go out of this position within the ATEM. I just know that for the most part, we have not done that with the ATEMs specifically. So, next question.
Next one is also from Jonas. Is there a way to delete all macros at once in an ATEM?
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, there's a paragraph in the save file. It's just a giant XML file. So there's a stanza that is the macros, and it's very clearly demarked in that configuration file. Just take your favorite editor and delete that stanza.
There's no button to do it. Or no operation to do it inside the ATEM, but you can just open up the save setting and get rid of it.
Yeah, that's all I know.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Victor Cahiao. Can someone explain Blackmagic Fusion and Fusion Render to a 10-year-old? That was a 5-year-old.
He's going up. He wants a little bit more detail than the 5-year-old would get. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, Fusion, I think of it. It's Photoshop. It does 3 things primarily that I think of: texting, meaning that you can actually generate titles and that kind of stuff on it. And then the other thing is compositing, which means like if you have something in video that you actually want to like add a screen, a sky replacement, or just you want to make a change of a visual image on video. And then the last one, let's see, would be visual effects. You can do some kind of things in visual effects with Fusion that you couldn't do otherwise. That's kind of.
And Fusion is what we call a nodal compositor. So basically, you have operations that get done, and you say, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to send the output of this node into another node. Then I'm going to send the output of this node into this, and you can basically build some pretty creative selections with that. So that using that nodal structure, that nodal tree structure, it lets you build these complex operations in real time. And so there's a lot of, then you can queue it. So you can build lower thirds. You can do really advanced green screen. It's fine to have a green screen keyer, but with a nodal compositor, you can do things like creatively combine garbage mats and do multiple keys and, really get the high level, effects that you might want to take things down. You can also bring, for instance, a lot of times we're not really compositing a single render from 3D. We might be rendering, like, for instance, when I did the Queen ship in Star Wars, it was 22 passes. I rendered 22 different things out. And then I use a compositor to put them all back together and line them up, and then I can play with every attribute, how shiny it is and what the reflection looks like and everything else. And so you have all those things separated. And a nodal compositor makes that kind of thing a lot easier than a layered compositor. Although I did that one in After Effects, but I would have done it in a nodal compositor if I had one at the time. Victor?
So it's something that could be used, for example, to create a super source. That would be trivial, a trivial use of that.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to build an animated super source, you want to build the composites for it, and you want to draw things out. Now, I will admit that I build my super sources in Motion because it's a lot easier. So Motion is much better for graphic. Like if you're going to build graphics that you want to play out, not ones that are dynamic like what you might do with, but if you want to build the lower parts of things that are animated and movies, I find that after you get over the hill of how Motion works, it is $50 and infinitely easier than everything else to just throw things together, throw backgrounds together, throw things and make it go. Yeah.
So our Motion and Fusion, they're in the same family, but they take different approaches.
Yeah. Fusion is a nodal compositor and Motion is really a GPU heavy layered compositor, and they're definitely different. But the main thing is you get in Motion, everything's so fast and it's all really geared towards playing back in real time and rendering out really fast. And then it has tons of templates. And so there's a lot of things that you can do very easily with their replicators. You can, build a background that's got a lot of things going on with it, throw things in, animate them, pull them in, and it works really fast. So almost all my graphics I produce in Motion.
I have them all, but I've never opened Fusion. I've never opened it. So that's why I was wondering.
I admit that I played with Fusion a little bit. I came out of doing years of Shake work. So Shake was something that so for me, Fusion makes a lot of sense. And I found yesterday I was playing with Audio Architect, which is the Tucker had suggested for audio, and it's a nodal compositor for audio. So that's what I saw. As soon as someone opened it, I was like, oh, I understand this. I can execute this. And so nodal compositing or nodal anything to me is a lot easier. I wish that Apple, for me, I think that somewhere between shortcuts and Swift is a nodal programming interface that I wish Apple would put in there. Anyway, next question.
Next one's coming in from David Brady in New York. He says, using the ATEM Pro ISO's encoder, is it possible to modify streaming settings such as rate control and keyframe interval?
I haven't done enough of it to know if there's a lot of control in that streaming. Yeah, go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, I think definitely frame rates, but I don't think I've ever seen a setting for frame rate. GOP setting the IMP frames.
Yeah, I mean that can be important. It's probably set generally. I think that it runs at. Oh, there goes my light again. I haven't quite figured out how to charge these lights, so I kept on thinking that it was plugged in, and it's not. But the GOPs, generally the safe thing is 60 frames or 60 frames per GOP, and so I'm guessing that's what it is. Let's go to the next question.
Next one's coming in from Victor Cahill in South Dakota. If I stream to YouTube from a Zoom call, will the quality be less than if I stream from an ATEM ISO?
Yes. Well, it depends on how you're doing it. So if you are, if you're doing the participant view and it's a 1080p participant, it should look better from the ISO. If you are doing it directly from Zoom, it will look better. It won't look any. It'll always be 720 and a little beat up, and you don't get super sources. There's a whole bunch of things you start giving up. That's what we're learning, and that's why we're going to get rid of it. Go ahead, Victor.
Maybe I need to clarify. So if I'm doing my show and I start YouTube from the Zoom call and it initiates the YouTube session, will that be less quality than if so I'm better off coming right out of my Blackmagic and going to Zoom directly?
Oh, now I'm confused. So you're going.
The bigger thing is that you've got that extra layer that's going through. So no matter what, it's going to be a step down. Even if there's a point where the quality is better than what coming out of your ATEM, you still have that chance that it could be downgraded at any time.
So, but yeah, streaming to YouTube from your from Zoom is always going to be lower quality than streaming directly from your ATEM. The question is if you need to use Zoom, if you have your participants, you could you could figure out a way to get it to them and then also get it to YouTube. So for instance, you could do something like have your HDMI out, go into a web presenter or something like that and go to Zoom. Then you'd have, well, you should be able to actually, you shouldn't even need to do that. You could use you could still use it as a webcam for Zoom, but you could stream just you to YouTube through the Ethernet, through the, internet connection. And so I think it could be a webcam and an output. Program would go out of both of those.
So basically what I'm going to lose is if I do it through Zoom, I'm going to get the Zoom call. But if I do it through my ATEM, I'm only going to get my 4 cameras.
Right. But you could theoretically take the Zoom call, for instance, and feed it back into the ATEM. Now that's going to create some weird loop when you go back out to everyone else. So, that's, like you could do something where you're able to show people that are in Zoom, but you could just decide that they're not going to see that. You're not going to see, but you would have, the problem is if you took another Zoom call and fed it into the switcher and then showed it, it'd create a loop because.
And is there a way to record Zoom call ISOs for the participants on a Zoom call, not on a webinar?
Late.
Or do you have to go to the fancy one computer per person?
That's the way I do it. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I think what Alex is trying to explain is that you would need to somehow be able to create a video mix minus for what you're feeding back into Zoom, so that you're not feeding Zoom back into itself. But in terms of quality, as Alex mentioned, streaming directly from Zoom will only go up to 720p, while with your ATEM, you can go up to 1080. And streaming from Zoom will give you that Zoom bug or powered by Zoom bug at the bottom, as opposed to your ATEM being nice and clean.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah. Just another consideration is that depending on what other features you have and whether you're doing other things that make you concerned about accidentally feeding back, if you have another computer, whether it's real or in the cloud, and all that computer, all that Zoom participant login is responsible for is watching everyone with the camera off, with their microphone off, and taking that HDMI out from that computer and encoding it, that's a more isolated, maybe a safer way to do it.
Go ahead, Peter.
Well, I was going to say I've done what Victor wants to do by using a second computer into my ATEM and using picture-in-picture so that I could, zoom out to me, if you will, but then collapse it so they see the participant view coming from the other computer.
And the one thing I did get, Courtney's computer showed up while I was here in LA, so I'm going to go up and test it. But it could be a relatively inexpensive way to bring Zoom participants in, that the slide is not working.
Yet another excuse for me to get a bigger ATEM. That's just all what I needed.
I wasn't going to say that, Victor, but I ordered mine yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next question.
Operators are standing by. Come on, Victor, pull the trigger. Can a Zoom, let's see, the next one's from Jonas Patel. Can a Zoom room show the attendee view or is it always custom?
Go ahead, Mickey.
You can see the attendee list with the Zoom room using the controller. And I don't know if Guy can pull that up. Well, he's multitasking right now. I wouldn't. Sorry for putting you on the spot, Guy.
See, there's what it looks like to the side. So this is the participants list. You guys can see that. Can the Zoom room show the attendee view or is it always custom? Attendee view. Oh, so he's asking to see the attendee view. No, it's always custom, Jonas, because, basically like right now I have Victor pinned in that display. So if I cut to that one full screen, here's what the Zoom, you're going to see all the gobbledygook on the screen because I haven't done anything to clean it up or crop it, but here's Victor. This is what one display we'll see. Cut, merge, So you can see this is a Zoom room. You can see the top left has that kind of dirty record and shield, and that it has the mute. And if I click, this is a touch screen, so if I hit unmute, the mute's there. So if I make this not a touch screen, I can get rid of that. Then the bottom left, I have that, and I have what is that? The 18. And if I unpin Victor, I should get a gallery view. So here's what happens if we go participants, scroll down to Victor, unpin Victor, and release, and now it's going to see. So it's not an attendee view. It's actually, you know what? You can. You just don't be a co-host. So this machine is a co-host. So if we demote this machine, it will see what the attendees are seeing. If you want to
try that now.
Yeah, let's see what happens.
All right. I am changing role to attendee, and it's rejoining.
Rejoining. Oh, it's going to see itself, and it's probably going to freak out.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's going to.
So right now I'm on active speaker view, and I should spotlight Guy.
I think that's going to freak it out. Yeah. It's seeing itself. It's looping. It's video looping.
It's a max headroom
effect there.
Yes,
if you speed that up, if you speed that up, like going really fast, it would create this kind of crazy, like Mickey's melting away, like
the Mickey max headroom.
Now you can spotlight it. Because it's now a 2-up, and now, it'll do that instead. So now I'm active speaker, and now, so that's the attendee view is what you'd see in that other box over there, but not looping into itself. So you can from a Zoom room, you just don't join in as into a webinar as a co-host. You would just be an attendee, and you would get attendee view. Does that make sense, Jonas? Hope that helps.
Hopefully it does. Next question.
Let me get back to that screen. Got a little buried there. Next one's from Brian Anderson. He's asking, what's the simplest way I could have non-technical persons record both their screen and their camera for post? I'd like PIP options and dual clean feed options if possible. Note clarification, dual screen feed would be preferable, but I'd be okay with PIP if that's all I could get.
So Brian, do they have to, do you want to record it on your end, or do they have to record it on their end?
They have to record it on their end because I'm busy doing other stuff. So, and it's academics doing presentations. So I had one last week, and I just had them use the feature, the PowerPoint in Zoom and word overlays, and which is okay, but not awesome. I'd love to have it separately, so I could get a better recording and then do it in post and bring them on and off when it made sense.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, John. Pruitt.
Oh, I was just going to say, get a basic camcorder, record that for the video, and then just get some screen recording software and do a screen record, and then you've got 2 samples. They just have to upload them to you. I did do a presentation a while ago using Zoom screen record, and it worked okay, but as you said, it's not the best.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Depending on how much time you or other people can spend training them, that is absolutely a factor. OBS, I have found, is stable enough for things at the price and value tier that you seem to be operating. And I think it's a worthwhile tool. We're going to be talking about education later, and it's a free tool. And if all you want to do is record a screen and a camera, that's something to look into.
Yeah, I pondered OBS, and there's no way to get dual clean feeds with OBS, is there? I would you could build a picture-in-picture scene for them, and they could do it that way. Is that true?
Natively, I don't think there is. There might be an extension. Is the extension buggy? Is it going to be buggy 6 months from now?
Windows and Mac, yeah.
Windows and Mac, yeah.
And is it one place, or do they all have to do it at home?
At home.
So you can't have like a place that they come to do the records. They have to do it at home. Okay, good. Jeffrey?
Yeah.
Well, won't Zoom be able to do that? If they go under 40 minutes, they should be able to record their screen and their video, but you could also set up a Zoom room or a Zoom meeting with them where you hit the record button and then they do their presentation and then you have the recording in the end if you don't need highest quality.
Go ahead, Mickey.
I was going to mention the same thing. If you do a cloud recording on Zoom, then you can have it record separate screen shares from the active speaker view. So if you jump on a meeting with them, keep your camera off, and they're the only person speaking, and they share their screen. You'll have separate recordings. But yeah, quality isn't great, but it'll get the job done. And on the Mac, you can also do both screen recording and camera recording from the webcam at the same time using QuickTime.
Is it possible for them to do that without me being in the meeting? Like, can they just do a Zoom call and record themselves that way?
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
Okay. And that's cloud only, where you get the dual.
Yeah, cloud recording only, and they need to have that set up so that it's a recording separate.
And the cloud recording is not. Cloud recording is not great. So definitely test it before you think it's going to work. I think it's really internally. The screen will be whatever resolution you give it, but it'll be low frame rate, and the person I think will be 640 by 360. It's not. Go ahead, Guy.
No, you can get awesome cloud recordings. There's a bunch of stuff in the back end where you can record the screen.
In cloud recording with a regular.
Oh, not with a regular account.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. With the account that they have, when they jump onto it, they're not with a 1080p account. You're absolutely right, but I think that the cloud recording with an average person's Zoom account will not be great. Chad.
I'm in the OBS forums, and it looks like there's a way that you can run 2 different instances of OBS at the same time. So you could have one doing the screen and one doing the camera. I'll post a link to that forum post in Mukana.
And you'd be able to do the same thing with QuickTime, except QuickTime works if you're on a Mac. If you're on a PC, I think that OBS, I would not try to do this with OBS on a Mac, but OBS on a PC, I think that Chad's solution is probably it. And then if they're on a Mac, you're probably better off using the web, using QuickTime and doing 2 records at the same time, because it's going to be supported more effectively from the operating system level than, I don't know what level of Mac would, bend under that requirement. So, but I bet you anything made in the last couple of years would probably be able to pull it off.
Well, I've never tried to record 2 QuickTimes simultaneously. You can do that?
Yep.
Huh. Okay.
And so you do make movie and make screen share or whatever, and you do both of them at the same time. Yep. Next question.
Next one's coming in from John Pewitt of Huntersville. What is the best LUT for a Pocket 6K and Zoom?
Yeah, like Mickey, we're all like, it depends. So what I'm playing with mine is the pipeline that you can buy a bunch of them, and I think Victor may have ones that he likes. I don't know if Victor wants to throw in like the LUT collection that you like for your Blackmagics. Yeah, go ahead, Victor.
The Lemming LUTs are really, really good. I'll get you a link. Yeah, he makes them for all kinds of cameras and DaVinci. Very good, very well integrated. I'll get a link for you.
My suggestion is to what I'm doing right now, and it's constantly changing. Not today, I'm in the hotel, but normally every day I'm kind of playing with it, and I haven't hit the mark yet. But what I'm doing is I'm taking a raw record from my Blackmagic, taking it into Resolve, building a cube in Resolve. So play with the color that I want to try to get it to where I want, then load it back onto the camera, and play with this interaction where I'm getting. My goal in the next couple of weeks is to get my camera to a point where I'm super happy with it without any shading. And then the shading is just the last little thing. Like I won't do any color. I won't do anything. I might make it a little brighter, a little darker, but I'm only making very minor adjustments in my ATEM. And the goal is to build that color look in Resolve. And you can do this in the free version of Resolve. So you don't need to pay anything for it. And the thing that it'll do is A, you'll get it just to the way you want it in your space. And B, you'll learn how to do it. So like learning how to build your own LUTs and load them onto the camera is learning how to fish, rather than buying fish. And so I think that I would, and we're going to be doing the Resolve training starting next week. And we'll get into more detail around that. So you'll learn a lot more about Resolve, but I would use it as an opportunity to learn as opposed to buying somebody else's. I think buying someone else's is great as long as you can open it and look at what it is. Lattice is a good piece. I love looking at Lattice. I can't think of the name of the company right now, but you can open up the cube file and actually look at it. Like, what is the transformation that it's doing? And it's become more and more useful for me to figure out what's going on. Victor?
I did take one of his LUTs and altered it in Resolve, and even for a newbie, I found it to be a pretty simple experience and definitely a learning experience.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about building your own LUTs soon, because I'm doing it every day now. So, next question.
Next one's coming in from Charles Klein in New York City. What is the future of SDI, and will the industry move to IP for anything past 40K 60?
Yeah, the future of SDI is 2110, 2110. Like that is where SDI is going. Now, there's lots of people using NDI. NDI was a new text version of we're impatient and we don't want to wait for 2110. It's taking SMT a long time to figure it out, and we need it now. So it made sense. But most of the large facilities that are being built today, looking out for the next decade, are building large chunks of what they're doing around 2110. And it's probably worth having a second hour on 2110 just so people understand what it is. But it's like the grown-up NDI, and it requires a lot of backbone, because it can theoretically just push uncompressed, through the thing. So when people are talking about it, they're talking about big switches. Yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, absolutely. And NDI is the baby brother of SMPTE 2110. And it's just exactly what exists on the spectrum of media production. Because, when it first started out, only the monks knew how to make books. And then we had the printing press. And now we have NDI for people in the mid-tier.
Yeah, and so it's that stuff's still coming. And the problem right now, and the reason a lot of us haven't adopted that yet, is because you end up with a lot of converters. There's just a lot of things that can't go into this and can't go into that. If you're doing most of your stuff with computers, the NDI works really well. And you can have cameras that tie into it, but there's all these like, how do I get in? How do I get out? How do I get in? How do I get out? And so that's slowly getting better and better, and we'll continue to see that. But the backbone of like new facilities, a lot of them are going to 2110. I admit that I still prefer SDI, and I probably will for a couple more years. We just bought, I don't know how many patch panels, like big patches that we can patch. And I like the idea of being able to physically decide where I'm going, where everything's going. If something goes wrong, there's a certain level of, I don't need power to make this work, to pass this data from one place to the other. So I'm still a little leery of it as the backbone for a large event. The places that are really adopting it are using it in smaller events and also in some trucks and so on and so forth. And they're putting in the back end, but then there's still a lot of SDI and HDMI that are still part of most pipelines. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Jeffrey Reyes, also in New York. I'm interested in using a MixPre 3 with a Blackmagic 6K. How do you connect the two to each other?
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I would go out of the stereo output of the MixPre 3 and go into the mini jack stereo input of the Blackmagic. Bear in mind it's an unbalanced connection, so that means that I wouldn't run anything longer than 2 or 3 meters cable wise, just to avoid interference in the cable. But another thing you can do is go from that mini jack output of the MixPre, the stereo out, and go into a DI. And that would give you a mono single channel balanced connection that you could feed into the TA3 input of the Blackmagic, unless you're talking about the new 6K, which has 2 of those.
Right. And that's the one advantage of getting a slightly larger mixer field recorder, is being able to get XLR outs, to send it in, and you can get that a balanced output. But yeah, that's exactly how we connect the USB 3 to and we're only using that as reference for sound anyway. So for us, one channel works well, because what you want is one channel that's pulling from the MixPre, one that's pulling from the internal mic, and then the MixPre is really recording what you're going to end up using in 32-bit float theoretically, and that's what you're going to end up going back to. Go ahead, Mickey.
And yeah, just to add to that, if you are going to end up doing post on this, I would rather send timecode out of the MixPre's mini jack output and feed that into the Blackmagic, and then you can actually use the recordings that are done on your MixPre as opposed to the files used on the Blackmagic without having to.
Could you have the Blackmagic use its internal mic on one and then use timecode on the other channel, right?
Those 2 recording channels on the Blackmagic will still be operational, and you can feed whatever channel you want to those 2 recording channels.
Okay.
So you can still, for example, you can use the TA3 input as channel 1 and use the internal microphone on channel 2 if you want.
And then use the headphone jack code as the timecode between the 2.
Yes, sir.
And then you could also do that with have you used Technical? Is that something that you like or not like?
I'm not a fan of the tentacle because of its lack of a screen and buttons. So if you need to if you need to change the settings on it, you'll need to use an app. I'm a big fan of the UltraSync 1 from Timecode Systems, and also the nano locket from Ambient. I really like those, but I like the UltraSync ones because they're lighter. And they also have a Genlock output on top of timecode output, which is nice. And sorry, just one more thing. Like, yeah, if you do send audio from the MixPre to the camera and not timecode, what you'll want to do is calibrate the camera to the output of the MixPre. So you'll want to send tone, and by default, the tone on the sound devices is set to -20 dBFS. So you send -20 out, and what you want to do is set the camera so that it sees that -20 from the MixPre and aligns it to -20 on the camera as well, so that you have matching levels. So when it's too loud on the MixPre, it's too loud on the camera. It's too quiet on the MixPre, it's too quiet on the camera.
Perfect. Well done. Next question.
That was an awesome answer, Mickey.
Yeah.
Coffee.
Stan Chan. Stan Chan of Roseville asks, can you use 4 super sources simultaneously with 4 ATEM Mini Extreme ISOs?
You could, yeah. You could use them simultaneously. I mean, they'd be in each one of those switchers. So there'd be an output. You would line them up as each outputs. And so you could have 4 of them and then have 4 in the main switcher. So you could have 4, you'd end up with 5 of those extremes. And then you'd basically be able to build a 4x4 box. So you'd have you could basically build what you're seeing here right now in Zoom inside of those switchers. And yes, I'm thinking very heavily about that. I mean, I know that at first it was just absurd to think that I would get 9 ISOs, but I'm starting to think that it might be at least worth a test, because you would be able to build some really complex interactions. You would have to basically, I think that you'd end up having to build an abstraction layer inside of Companion or inside of something else to make that viable. But I think it would be, they actually could for 10 grand or 11 grand, you could do a lot, Jeffrey.
So would it be in Blackmagic's best interest to make the software so it can control multiple ATEMs at one time? Because right now it can only do one at a time, right?
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to do that. I think it's just outside. It's so far outside of their spec. I don't think that they're going to sit there and make a switcher that runs. I do agree with you that what would be really cool is that you have these switchers and they just line up as the controls, and you can just jump from one ME. Basically, you make them into one ME at a time, and then they just feed in automatically, and you wire them up. But it seems like a convoluted. It seems like something that someone should build. I'm still playing with the idea whether it's practical or not. But because you're going to end up, you have to remember that you're going to end up with additional delays and stuff like that. You have to figure out. Go ahead, Peter.
I was just noticing yesterday on the site there, with all the new mini extremes, they're pushing the development kit even harder than they used to do things like you just talked about. Yeah, they're not going to do it. They're going to let you give you the tools to do it.
Yeah, that's been. I think that they really look at their software as kind of table stakes. Like, these are the basic things you need to work, and it works great the way it's designed. And then they let the rest of us. They give us the rest of us the tools that we need to run with it. Next question.
Man, Stan's got my brain going now. I'm thinking, okay, how about a Zoom room in the cloud? So to do this same setup, I can do 7 instances with 7 Zoom rooms, pin 2 people to each Zoom room, suck them into vMix, and I could build this whole thing at $1.50 an hour times 8 machines, whatever that equals. And then a vMix, or no, I wouldn't need a vMix license on just the one. So something to Stan,
it does start to add up. Like, you save money, but if you start getting complicated in the cloud, you start outrunning your hardware. What it would cost to do it in hardware. That's the only challenge.
Challenge accepted, Stan. See me here next week.
All right, next question.
Next one, James. Like Alex's light failure, how do you deal with kit failure you send out to untechnical participants?
Well, number one is the reason that I test things when we're working in this is so that this doesn't happen to to someone on the far end. So I know how, these are new lights. These are these little PavoTubes. And there's obviously something that I haven't figured out about how they take power, because one of these was plugged in and it powered just fine, and another one didn't. And I'm using like standard USB-C cables and not their power supplies. That was part of the test. I didn't bring them with me. I just brought a bunch of USB-Cs. And so I'm not using the way that they were designed. I'm trying to figure out, where are their limits and so on and so forth. And a lot of things that so that's one of the things is you test it. And again, I'm using mostly our kits at home and in the office, specifically so that I get to know the kit. So like every day when Shannon jumps on her stuff, she's using the smaller kit. Every day I'm jumping on, I'm usually using the larger kit. And the reason I'm doing that is to see what the behaviors are over a long period of time to avoid, lights going out. I will say that one of the things we try to do is have people check their kit the day, day 2, 3 before. Like we don't want their kit to show up the day before the event. We want it to show up a couple days before the event. We want to do a walkthrough, make sure everything's working. And then you have to look at that as like that is the fact that I don't know what's going on is kind of a risk factor that, which is why we're not using these tubes yet. We're using the Luma pads. Go ahead, Roscoe.
You send out anything battery operated in a kit?
Not usually. I mean, and I felt like this was an interesting one because they could lose power, or they could be in a place where what I like about the PavoTubes is they could be in a place for a couple hours. It ran for a couple hours on the battery. So a normal person using it for one of our events that they're only on for an hour or two, it'd be fine. I really am pushing the outer envelope of what they're designed for. So, and I got to figure, again, that's part of what we got to figure out. I would prefer at some point to have everything running on battery, like everything plugged into a laptop and everything on battery, so that someone could be anywhere and all they need is an internet connection to work. So that's the goal. Next question.
Next one's coming in from James Fosling in Bloomington. Playoutbee has been great to play videos easily into ATEM. Looking for other ways without tear out. Maybe you can't get simple, cheap, and full quality.
I mean, the other thing about it is also that there is, I think that the tearing is only coming in a very specific behavior. So you have to decide what you're using it for. Like I'm not looking at, I'm not looking at using Playoutbee for, my main shows, but I am looking at it as glue that I might get a couple raspberries and have them all running, something where there's like little coming back soon and lots of other little things that I don't want to necessarily tie up a hyperdeck for, or I need little playouts. And so having little glue that will do that is useful to me, and being able to have a web, interface that could run those things is useful too. So you definitely have to use everything for what it's designed, where its design limits are at the moment. But I think the more we use it and the more we, support Jonas in building it, these are early days. so we, I think that using it and giving Jonas feedback will improve the product to a point where we could use it for more. And I think for smaller events, when you don't have the budget to get a bunch of hyperdecks, I think it could be really useful. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Mark Hadley in Seattle. Is it possible to set up a VPN to be used as a back channel for zoomOSC without routing all the video through the VPN? I am talking about VPNs either at my DMZ or brought up at something like DigitalOcean or AWS.
I don't know if you need VPN to do that. Well, you might need to build some kind of tunnel. This is where, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I have zero experience at the moment with zoomOSC, but assuming you just want to control a zoomOSC instance at a remote location, if you do VPN, that machine will essentially appear as if it's in your local network. So you can send the zoomOSC commands or OSC commands in general to that remote client.
I would highly recommend it. Maybe just because we don't have a tag for it, we should probably put a tag in for zoomOSC, or I would tag the zoomOSC education questions in EDU, but tag zoomOSC questions as second hour, even though it's not third hour. So just tag those, because I think that question, I think I want to push that maybe back into the center. And Guy, you don't want to, it's best not to move things into the center channel unless we have to, because we want to leave things out to be voted on, as long as they possibly can. Let's pull this one back. I guess we can't, hold on, there we go. We'll pull that one back and bring it up when Andy's here. Next question.
Next one's coming in from JJ McKenna. What is the least costly method of entry into Frame.io using their full feature set?
Go ahead, Mickey.
The most affordable plan will get you right in. I believe it's $15 US dollars a month if you go at it at the monthly plan, and that gives you 250 gigabytes of storage.
There you go. Next question.
Next one's from John Pewitt. I've heard this a few times. What is a cube?
A cube file is the file format for a LUT. So it's so if you're building a LUT, you're going to save it out as a cube file, and it literally, when you open it, the lookup table is literally a transformation. It's a matrix, and it just says you're moving this. Is the reason we call it a cube file is because if you open it up, it looks like a cube, and it's saying, it's like if you think of a curve in Photoshop is I'm going to go up. And that when you pull that curve down, it says when it goes up at one level, it's going to go out at a different level. The curve is changing it. When you open up curves in Photoshop, it's a straight diagonal because it says the input is the same as the output. Whereas if I start pulling it down or pushing it up, I'm saying that the input at this level I'm actually going to change its output level based on the input. And so what a cube does, it does that in 3D space. And so it's moving all those things. So if a cube is in a perfect cube, it is going up and out at the same color. As you start to move those points, transform those points, you're transforming how color goes in and out, but across the entire 3D space of color. Go ahead, Daniel.
Would you say that it's reasonable to make an analogy to an audio's graphic equalizer? Is there something to be understood?
It's a little like that. So, yeah, it's just more reference points, but it's not unlike that. Yeah, it's curves and graphic equalizers and so on and so forth are saying your input's coming out, and then I'm making this louder or this darker. So it is just across multiple colors, at the same time in 3D space. Go ahead, Roscoe.
I say think of a prism, in that the light comes in as one and it gets changed as it comes out the other end. It's not the same. It's not actually separating the frequencies, but it's changing the light. So the light may come in as blue, but it comes out as slightly green blue on the other side. So if that helps you visually.
But it, and the way I just think of it is like you have a location in if you think of color in a 3D cube, you have a location of that color, and we're moving that location. So it's going to come in at a location, and I'm moving it over here. I mean, that's what the cube is actually doing. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Mark McChesney in Owenton. I have an audio podcast that I usually record in person. I am trying the first video version because of COVID and cold weather with Zoom. Doing this because of those circumstances and the desire to start on YouTube. Any Zoom tips?
Go ahead, John.
Place your monitor right underneath the camera so that anything that you're looking at, put at the very top of the camera or at the top of the monitor so that when you're looking at the monitor, it looks like you're looking at the camera.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Any Zoom tips? I guess generally speaking, my tip would be watch or join office hours every single day. Talk about this. We talk about this the entire time, from video to audio. But I mean, specific tip. Okay, original sound helps a lot. If you have a good system and good audio chain and also a decent room, turn on original sound.
And I think one of the questions is also how many people are joining, what their technical skills are, what the power of their computer is. If you're having a discussion and people have powerful enough computers, you could also do things like double end, which is that you're going to have Zoom run, you're going to talk over Zoom, but you're going to record on, let's say, just QuickTime using an input. You let everybody record the videos. Now you have a really high quality source file that you can use. So that's another way to just kind of get that and then have them send it to it. But it depends on how technical the far end is, and then you want to record the Zoom anyway, because if they don't show up, you want to be able to have something to go back to. So you want to record a full mix, but you can record the separate one and then re-edit it together. And we've done that for audio for a long time. We've done it for some videos as well, but it's pretty computationally expensive. So you have to make sure that you have a computer that can handle it. Go ahead, Terry, or Paul, Terry, Wallace.
You can call me either one.
Yeah.
I have a 2-word answer, Jeffrey Powers. Make friends with him. And he's a YouTube pro, and I'm sure there's other YouTube pros on this panel.
Yeah.
That I would get up with Jeffrey one-on-one and watch his podcasts. They're amazing.
That's great. Guy?
Yeah, I would say on this one, get off Wi-Fi, make sure you're on a hardwired Ethernet connection. The other one would be to get a Facebook portal or an Echo Show 8. And if you're on a regular 360p account, it'll bump it to 720p. So that way your recordings and your live to YouTube will be a little bit higher quality. So those are 2 tips. And then, yeah, watch the show and stay tuned. There's more.
Yeah. And Jeffrey, are you, is there any tricks for how do you handle remote guests for YouTube records?
Well, I usually, when I do something like that, well, at the time it used to be Google Hangouts. I don't do too much of that anymore, but I do bring in Zoom. I bring it into Wirecast or vMix, and then I send that out to YouTube from there, controlling as much as possible.
Yep. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Carroll Stream, Illinois, with Andy Kantarek. Notice current Zoom session is being video switched between panelists and gallery views. What tool is being used? zoomOSC, Isadora, QLab, Stream Deck, Mickey.
Go ahead, Mickey.
I feel like a caveman here, and I am using Command-Shift-W to do it.
Just to toggle between the two. Yeah, it's all inside of Zoom. So it's there's not. This is what you're seeing here right now is just using the native Zoom tools, which is still good to know how to build a good show or a reasonably good show with it. Even though we're going to probably move to things, but even when we're doing it, what we're going to next, it'll still be cutting it. It's just that it'll be streamed out. The output of it will be streamed out. So, next question.
Next one's coming in from Edwin Ruiz in Chicago. In 2 weeks, I'll be doing a panel talk via Zoom and purchased the 2 headset microphones Alex and the crew loves. The show is explicitly revolving around race and equality. The Caucasian nude colors of both mics on a darker complexion feel like something I should address. Any suggestions?
Yeah, go ahead, TJ.
Yeah, there was a comment a couple months ago about somebody talking about taking the microphone colors and adjusting them to skin tone. In this case, I would take like a permanent marker meant for plastic and make them all black, sort of like Alex's is now. His came that way from the factory, but you can easily do that. Make it black. That way, basic black kind of goes with everything. And then if you get an oil-based marker that will last longer, probably won't rub off on the skin. And if you need a better coverage, longer lasting coverage, you can take nail polish and coat the surface, and that'll help protect it a little bit more. Take clear nail polish, and you can get clear nail polish in a matte finish now.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from our friend David Brady, who works with one of the big affiliates for broadcast in New York. And he has a lot of stuff that he showed us in the post show behind the scenes. So his question is, if there were one piece of desert island analog gear you had to preserve, what would it be? We've got a lot of stuff at the office that will eventually be e-wasted or archived.
I think probably my Whirlwind 1 XLR to 6. I don't know what I would do with it if I was on a desert island, but I'd be like, those things we have ones just laying around, and I don't know when we'll ever they won't ever not get implemented as far as analog gear. Go ahead, Victor.
I'm sorry, I have to say it, my saxophone.
Well, there's that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guess if I was going to be on a desert island, I need something analog. I'd probably take my Imbira, because it would be the one thing I could sit there and learn, finally get much better at playing. I'd have a lot of time. Go ahead, Daniel.
Qbox is pretty useful. You can, unfortunately, too easily make it feed back on itself, so emit some really loud SOS signals that way.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I'd take my Yaesu FT991 ham radio so I could connect
Call
with
for
people
help.
all over the world.
That's great. There you go.
Can I change my answer?
Yeah. Go ahead, Roscoe.
I'm gonna say I'd take one of those biggest, humongous cameras that came from the old studios. There are so many parts and pieces in there. You could make all kinds of stuff with the parts that are just inside those things.
That's great. Next question.
Next one's coming in from James Badabit in San Diego. Zoom meeting recordings from the Zoom cloud have noise, echo, uneven loudness, etc. Is there a way to process these recordings to improve the sound quality?
Mickey?
Yeah, a compressor would help out with that. The dynamic range compressor to be specific, and also there are plugins such as like Wave Rider and Vocal Rider that would help out. Although I mean, like I wouldn't do it for stuff that has to be broadcasted out like on TV. But if it's just to make things easier to listen to, then yeah, definitely try those out.
Good, Daniel.
If it's just a one-off rather than a problem you need solved recurringly, you can probably find people on Discord who would happily, for a small gratuity, run audio through software that they already have and that they're looking for an ROI on. I'm one of those people.
Yeah, I mean, some of the echo stuff, what I've been most successful with is
Synaptics.
Synaptics Unveil has been the one that I've been most successful with in removing echo, but it's not perfect. It just does. The best thing to do is try to tell people not to use speakerphone. Next question. We're going to keep moving. We're almost out of time.
Next one's from Craig K in Toronto. Has anyone used the UltraSync BLUE? Thoughts?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I got 2 of them. I'm not a fan of anything like that runs on 2.4 gigahertz for production work, but we have a few script 2 supervisors that use the Movie Slate app for their notes. So integrating the UltraSync BLUE, which is essentially a Bluetooth version of the regular UltraSync. This is the regular UltraSync. The UltraSync BLUE will allow you to hook it up to devices such as the Zoom recorders that don't have an actual TCN but have Bluetooth, or some apps, and integrating the UltraSync BLUE to the Movie Slate app with the script supervisor add-on would allow them to line up their notes to the actual takes timecode wise.
That's great. Next question.
Next one's coming in from James Babbitt, San Diego. Hi, Alex. What are the advantages of using PavoTubes for lighting? Which PavoTubes are you using and where are they mounted? Note, do the PavoTubes help reduce reflections from glasses?
So this is what we're talking about here. This is a PavoTube 2 6C is what I'm using. And it's powered by USB-C, although I'm having a little trouble with the power right now, like figuring out why it sometimes runs out. One of them ran out and the other one didn't. They're both plugged in. I don't quite understand yet. So still working on it. The big thing for me is that it's a lot of light and it's small. So I'm able to, I'm always looking for how do I pack a kit that's going to be really tiny that can fit into my carry-on. And I came down to LA in a carry-on. So I've got like a little bit of a kit here and my headset makes it smaller. I'm still using a USB pre. I have a Logitech and I have 2 of these PavoTubes, although one, as I said, went out. I'm using bigger light stands. I've already ordered smaller ones because this is insane. So 2 little newer light stands that go up to 32-inch is what I ordered to replace these ones. And but the goal is to get a kit that will fit into my backpack that's reasonably good and something that we can send out. So I'm still working on the advantage of these. The LumaPad is what we're standardized on right now, but I'm always experimenting with the next generation of whatever we're doing. I do like the idea. Right now, we only send out 1 LumaPad. The idea of sending 2 of these out on either side is useful. Now I'm using the light from the hotel on one side because one of them went out. These are cool because they have, you can put them in a lot of places. They have magnets on them, so you can just snap it onto metal. So that's kind of a slick thing. And then they have 1/4-20s on both ends, which means I can make some other decisions about them. And so, I'm excited about them. I'm not, sold yet, and we're not you're going to start using them yet, but they're interesting. You'll probably see me play with them for a couple of weeks before we make a decision. Go ahead, Paul.
I just want to shed a tear, Alex, for your older Nan light, your little Nan light that went by apparently.
It's too small of a source, for what I'm doing. It's a little too sourcey. I still use it. I'm using it for other things at the office, and I'll probably end up using it as like accent light is a great place to put those kind of lights. And so it's not with me, nothing goes away. It just gets used in a different way. And so I think that one for me is that's that little nano light or whatever. And I still think it's a really slick, in its form factor. I think it's the nicest one that I've seen. So I'm really happy with it. It's just not what I want to send out to people. The source, it's just too sourcey. Michael?
Just quick, does it come with brackets?
No, it just comes 1/4-20 on either side. So you figure out what you want to put it on. Next question.
Next one's coming in from our friend Tony Mobley in Newman, I believe that's Georgia, Noonan. Are office hours panelists selling their ATEM Mini or integrating with the ATEM Mini Extreme?
Go ahead, TJ.
I bet there's going to be a lot of for sales of ATEM Minis on the Discord soon.
Yeah, we're going to have to build a market at some point, where people can just be buying and selling stuff. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, and we need to take and show the multi-view out to, we had professors that were watching a production we were doing. The ATEM Mini without, not even being a pro, are very functional to feed another Zoom meeting or to feed a Zoom meeting with the multi-view. So there's a lot of functions to not get rid of them.
Yeah, I have to admit, I very rarely sell anything. I usually just end up using it for something else. So I have a feeling that my ATEM Mini will continue to be in heavy use, even as again, another ME that's being fed into the larger one, which gives me a little bit more control. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, this is Time Magazine from a couple of weeks ago. Main front advertisement that everyone sees is Blackmagic advertising the ATEM Mini, and this was when they knew that they were going to be putting out the next generation, and they're still advertising the current one, which is good for us who are trying to sell these because people have seen them.
Well, and again, I don't think that I think for my desk, for some of the stuff I'm doing, I think that I definitely I'm getting the ISO, but for a small desk or a small travel kit or whatever, I still like the little ATEM Mini Pro. That's like my backpack switcher, and what eventually will be something that I end up using like on the road. Like I'm still playing around with this kit, but I have a feeling that my little ATEM Mini Pro will be my kit with a 6K or something like that. Is just kind of like a little kit that I can put together there.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking about something like this stimulating the eBay market for us who are trying to get rid of what we have to get the new stuff.
Right. Yeah. But it's I think that Blackmagic is slowly building a seamless, the way Apple's done with their watches and their iPods and everything else. They're going to build a seamless connection between $300 and about $10,000, and they're just going to own that market. Within the next year or two, you'll be able to buy something at increments of a couple $100 more or $1,000 more at different increments all the way up to the Constellation. And I don't know if they're going to, I wouldn't be surprised if they then go take the Constellation to another when they get to that, but that market is really small. Like the big market, I guarantee they made way more money on the minis than they made on the Constellations. Like as far as in any way that you can measure it. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and jump into mic checks for education. Welcome to our educators. If you are an educator, you want to jump in, raise your hand, and someone will let you in. I'm not a host. I won't let you in, but it's not because I don't want you to be in. I just can't. I can't do it. So anyway, raise your hand if you'd like to become part of the panel as an educator, and then we'll go ahead and do quick mic checks with everyone. Go ahead, Nikki.
All right. Hey everyone. Please put your first name, last name, and location in Zoom. And on the meters we have here, the goal is to hit -24 on the short term. That's that number on the upper left-hand side of the meters. Let's start off with Aaron and then move on to Steve Cotton afterwards.
All right, good morning from Boston, where it's a little chilly this morning, but I'm really loving the winter wonderland I'm seeing outside my window today.
If you could maybe just turn down a dB, Aaron.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve, and then Kara afterwards.
All right, good morning from the East Bay and San Francisco Bay Area. I'll be talking about this level, and I think my level's looking pretty good there. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Kara and then Michael Ball. We're not hearing you, Kara. we'll go around back to you, Michael, and then Kent afterwards.
All right. Good morning from San Francisco, where it's looking like it'll be a nice day today, and it looks like I'm coming in a little bit low, so I'll just
bump up 3 or 4 dB,
a few notches, and I'm glad to be back and joining everyone this week.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kent, and then Tony Mobley.
Good morning. I've been off for quite a while. Life has been kind of crazy, so it looks like I need to come down. Coming down a few, come down a few more. There we go. And so I'm still talking. Now I went too far.
So maybe just a dB or 2 back.
Okay, back up. Yeah. All right. Cool. Oh, there you go. There's that magic number. Maybe. Sweet. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you very much, Tony, and then Emily.
Hello, office hour educators. Greetings from metropolitan Atlanta. I hope everyone is well, surviving the cooler weather here.
Hey, Tony, so on your ATEM, you're still going through your ATEM, correct? For your microphone?
Yes.
So yeah, if you could maybe bump down, give us 2 button presses down on the ATEM, which should be around 6 dB of change.
That's 2 buttons down on the ATEM Mini.
Looks like you're about there. Thank you very much,
Thank
Emily,
you, sir.
and then James Hughes afterwards.
Good morning from Red Hook, New York, where it just finished snowing for 37 hours straight, but it was like the light and fluffy champagne snow, as my dad calls it. Looks like I'm getting a thumbs up from Mickey, so I'm looking forward to talk.
Awesome. Thank you very much, James, and then John Middleton afterwards.
Good morning from Southern California. It's my first time here. It's kind of interesting. Looks like I'm a little low.
Yeah, just give us a tiniest nudge up, just a click up.
Okay, how is that? Did I come up any at all? No, I didn't. Let's see. How am I doing now? It's
I think you're in the ballpark.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, John, and then Jessica Lopez Barkle afterwards.
Hello from Monterey, but I have a helicopter flying overhead and I think I'm a little hot at this moment. I'll go down and I think I'm pretty close, and I have not heard of champagne snow, but my PR40 microphone would drink to that.
Maybe could you split the difference on that change you made, John? Go back up just a little bit.
Ditto. Got it.
All right, Jessica, and then hey, Bill's here.
I am, and I think I'm just setting up my ATEM, and I'll be doing my mic check right after that, if it's okay.
Cool. Yeah, Jessica?
Good morning. I'm Jessica Lopez Barkle from Kaimisha Lake, New York in the Catskills. I don't have it plugged into the ATEM right now because I have a bunch of things run around, but I just wanted to join in. I have a TK-GAO, I don't know how to pronounce it, USB microphone.
Do you have any control on that, on the levels of the microphone?
Just through Zoom.
So yeah, if you do you still have headroom to bring your level up a bit?
All right, is that better?
Yeah, when you brought it up, there's a little buzz going on, and you brought it up, and it was more of a buzz. So we might want to think about that.
Yeah, actually, where is the microphone placed, Jessica?
It is off to my right.
Is there any chance of you possibly getting it closer so that we can bring it closer and bring the level on and within Zoom down and get less of the buzz?
Yeah. Is that better?
Yeah, that's way better. So give us a little nudge down on the level, and you should be in the ballpark. Just the smallest nudge down.
Good. Talking. Fun.
Yeah, I think we're in the ballpark there. Just be mindful of we like to keep our mics muted when we're not speaking, so just be mindful of that. And welcome to the panel.
Another thing, Jessica, are you touching the microphone at all? Because I thought when I thought you touched the microphone, I heard that buzz go up a little bit more and then down when you don't touch it. So try not to touch the microphone.
Will do.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. Bill, and then let's check back in with Car afterwards.
Good morning, everybody. Let's see how the meters are bouncing for me today. After I talk for 10 seconds or so, it looks like we're pretty close. Mickey, you want me to come down a tiny bit, or are we okay?
Maybe 2 dB down.
Okay,
Bill.
let's try a couple of clicks down and see if that gives me a better average, or did I go one too far? Nope, you're saying good. And if you say I'm good, I'm good.
Thank you very much. Kara, how's it going?
Good. It always helps to turn my mic back on. So user error on my side. So it looks like my levels need to go down just a little bit, Paul. And we're about there. Yeah. Is that about good?
Bounce back up a dB or 2.
Okay, Paul. 1 dB or 2. Sounds good. All right. All good?
Maybe another more. One more bump up.
Okay. Sometimes when I get excited. Okay.
No worries. Chad and Sky, what's up? Chad first.
Well, since we have been doing the Educator Saturdays, we give educators a second chance at the Discord link. So there's about 20 minutes left on the Discord link. It's in Mukana right now. If you're not there, go there. That's where we continue this conversation.
Brilliant. Sky. And thanks for that, Chad. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Since I just stepped in, I want to confirm my mic is doing what it's supposed to, coming out of a Countryman E6 down into the MixPre 3. I'm not seeing any fingers going up or down. I'm seeing Mickey just looking at me.
One click up.
There it is.
Sky.
One click up to the happiest hour of my week. Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Welcome to the, so it's interesting. So if you saw that freeze, every time I'm unmuting my mic, it's freezing. So it's very, I'm not sure exactly what's causing that. So it's something that's interesting. I'm just noticing every time I turn it on and off, I have this like freeze frame. So anyway, welcome to all the educators. It's good to see all of you. And Jessica, welcome. I think this is your first time on the show. So it's good to have you. So what's any updates of things that are now? Emily, you did a clubhouse, right? How did that go?
It went really well. Everybody showed up from office hours to support, so that was nice. We had like 12 to 15 people in and out, and Erin was my wing woman to make sure that we met previous to going live on air to make sure we knew how all the buttons worked, and it went pretty well. And we think we're going to keep trying an 8 o'clock meetup just to talk about education stuff in general. So might theme it, might do some stuff, but just kind of playing with it right now.
That's great. And that's 8 o'clock Eastern Standard.
Yeah, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I try to stay up as late as I can, but I can't go much later than that and then still work the next day.
No, that's great. Yeah, I think that's hopefully what people, I think a lot of people take advantage of the group in that way, is that we just have a lot of folks that, are kind of already friends, that you can get a bunch of people to show up. And so things are successful immediately, as opposed to you having to do it and kind of figure it out in little bits and pieces. And so I think that's a real power of the group. And I definitely encourage people to ask for help and definitely encourage people to, when you see someone else in this group doing a stream, whether it's Sky doing cooking or whether it's Victor doing saxophone or Emily doing Clubhouse, is if you have any way of at least jumping in for a little while and being part of it, that helps, it helps build energy. And sometimes that's the energy that it needs to get off the ground, and so us, supporting our own, not to be tribal, but, but people, when, as this group keeps on getting bigger, as we keep on inviting more people, as people start to, as you can really, we can become our own weather system, where a lot of us show up somewhere and it makes our shows successful when they might not be otherwise, out of the gate. And so it can reduce weeks of work or months of work or years of work by us supporting each other. So, and also, Jeffrey plays it pretty low key, but a lot of times we don't know what Jeffrey's working on. So when Jeffrey's putting stuff up, we should go look at that too. So, but when anybody's doing these things, we want to make sure to support each other on those processes. All right, next question. Bill, we're going to throw you right into the hot seat.
Oh, okay.
Guy's here.
Yeah,
Did you want to keep doing questions?
I thought Guy was gone too, but he's back and he did such a great job this morning.
Sure, either way. I'll go ahead and take this one. Mark Hadley, is it possible to set up a VPN to be used as a back channel for, oh wait, that's a zoomOSC one. How'd that get in there? Let's go over to education. Dan Huber asks, Emily hosted an education-focused clubhouse this week. How do you think that the platform worked?
Sorry, I didn't see that. I didn't see it. I didn't take away your question on purpose, but we just covered that one. All right, go ahead, Emily. You want to say anything else?
Well, just a real quick, I think there was a consensus among the group too that it was nice to just have a chat with voices instead of having the Zoom video part and having to be on. Like I literally lost track of time this morning and like 5 minutes ago threw myself in the shower and was like, oh my God, I got to get on office hours. And my husband's like, don't worry, I'll get you in there. But like with Clubhouse, you can just show up. So I came in from shoveling the driveway and like turned it on and was ready to go. So I think that, you know, that's kind of a nice feature. And then the eavesdropping feature of being able to be a listener into a bunch of different rooms. And we have a thing in education called EdCamp where you go and everybody kind of crowdsources ideas and it's a PD day, but it's run by the people attending the PD. So it's not run by an overall like person or thing. And you vote with your 2 feet. So voting with your 2 feet is you walk into a conference room and it's not your cup of tea or they're not talking about what you thought they were going to talk about. You just get up and leave and no one's offended that you got up and left. And I think that Clubhouse has that potential too. So looking forward to using it a lot.
I admit I do that a lot with Clubhouse. I go in, I listen for a little while, but for a couple minutes, and then I'm like, okay, I got to go. I haven't really found anything that hooked me yet, but I haven't heard yours yet. So I'll try to jump into that this week. Michael?
Yeah, I don't know if I had my Clubhouse set up or wasn't maybe following Emily yet when hers happened, but the one that you hosted on Wednesday I thought was really interesting was, I went from finally getting in to joining in the span of an hour, and it worked out. So that was it. But I think Emily's point about just being able to go over audio and not have to worry about video is it is really nice for certain things. I have especially some of my friends who are also on Zoom all the time are, a lot more conscious about when we would have a phone call versus just a Zoom meeting. And I think just giving everyone that flexibility is just a really nice thing because it's definitely psychologically sort of a different experience. And sometimes it's more fun to be on video and sometimes it's really much nicer to have that audio only option.
Right. Bill and then Roscoe.
Okay. For a question or
no, I thought you raised your hand. Sorry.
Oh, no. I just waved at Guy. Guy has some family thing. So
okay, got it. Roscoe.
Yeah, I thought Emily and Aaron did a nice job just kind of co-hosting or the trade-off. And I don't know if that comes from experience here or what, but I think people who have been here and like you say, maybe it's just the familiarity, knowing the speech patterns. You kind of learn when someone's done with their statements and you learn how to, okay, that person is done. I know they've reached the conclusion and now I hand it off. And I think they have an advantage there maybe from being here, but it was very nicely done.
Ken?
Yeah, and I've been teaching Zoom and a lot of the students don't want to have their cameras on, and I think it's because they're trending towards just having an audio type experience. And so I'm kind of wondering what this would be like for a teaching experience, right? And I don't know how it would work, but it seems like students don't want to have their video on, and that's fine because this is just an audio experience and it would actually work.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, and I think that, for teaching, I think it's clear that there's a place for, audio only or primarily audio things. Podcasts of various forms are great, but I do think the thing that's nice is having everyone sort of be on the same page and making that a little bit easier. Because the one thing that is awkward is half on video and half off, and the dynamic that is different that creates between people. Whether you feel like you should have video on and you just aren't there yet, or there's sort of a bias towards interacting with a certain group of people who are on video and others who aren't. So yeah, I don't know how I could use it in a classroom yet, but I think it would be really interesting to try and see if there was a model like that to get a group of students or something like that, or maybe a wider community group on campus to participate.
Well, and one of the things that, one of the reasons that there is I think we're going to have to move it to an app so that it can sit in the background better. But Mokana, the mobile version, can listen to the audio. And the specific idea was you just listen to it and then just ask questions and chat and so on and so forth. And you don't have to even join Zoom to do that. I think that what's missing right now that we're researching is just, can we build a simple app that did the same thing, but that properly sits in the background to let you listen to it, because that behavior for the most part would be exactly like if the speakers all went into Zoom and then we just pumped it out to that and then it just did the thing, it might be the same experience for a lot of people who just want to listen and then interact. Like the thing is that you can just jump in and ask a question or vote on questions if you wanted to, but you could also just walk around, do the dishes, and have something in the background. Go ahead. This is what I do when I listen to NPR. John?
Sort of following up what Michael said, one of our faculty members, I work with this group, did what was called a bad hair day Zoom meeting. Everyone turned off their cameras. They just opened up a Google Doc and just did a text chat for 15 minutes. Then they kept the video off and they raised their question hand in the Google Doc and the professor called them out. They didn't turn the video on the whole time. Yeah. And actually different people spoke and it changed the pace of the class. So they've talked about doing a bad hair day, Zoom day, every month or so in their class.
Interesting. Cara?
I was just going to say that the first couple of times when I missed being on the meeting, I was walking my dog and participating in Mukana and listening to you guys on Zoom. So it's definitely one of those things when you've been also just sitting too long, it's, too much sitting is not a good thing. So being able to move around at the same time and still learn.
Well, and that's the goal of why we want to get Mukana to a slightly more stable version. We've been testing it and playing with it, but we're going to put it on its own server, so we're not dealing with Shoutcast. And then, but build a more stable interface for that. And a lot of this was just seeing whether people would use it or what the behavior was. But I actually think that, a year from now, probably 80-90% of the audience will just be listening and then asking questions and voting on it if they want to. Because I think that experience will work for a lot of people. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, this is getting a little into the weeds, I suppose. But have you ever considered instead of just a text form of asking a question in Mukana, an audio form where you could almost run it a little bit more like a traditional call-in show?
Yeah. So the reason I don't do that is because I hate call-in shows. I mean, to be honest with you, I love listening to talk shows and I hate listening to people drone on. So the average person listening to a show is not very good at asking their question. So that gets back to they go around the house like 40 times before they go through the front door, because what they wanted to talk about was the 40 things other things that they wanted to say on the talk show. And then they ask a stupid question, and so, I don't mean to be so, I am rough about that, because it's just, you're like, oh, like when we do it, the reason I push everybody into text is because everyone gets to see it and everyone gets to vote on it and push it up or down. Now right now we get to every question, but I got to tell you, it makes a great show when you have 1,000 people or 1,500 people voting and you're not going to get to all the questions. You're not going to get them all on video. The video gets really tight because you just have one killer question after another that is what everybody wanted to hear. And everybody has agreed to that process. And so when you put it into audio and video, now we do that with shows where people do video or audio submissions, and then we pick ones that are radio ready or TV ready. And to your point, Michael, that actually is a great experience, because you can hear it. As a general, during a live event, it's really hard because we can't go through them fast enough, to do that. So, and then when you open it up, so I have done this. So when you open it up, the problem is you get a whole bunch of people asking questions in a live. If I've got a 1 hour or 2 hour event, I can't go through them fast enough. And then what happens is that, but you've now opened this gate. So people stop using the text. They all want to use the audio. And then you end up with a bunch of junk, and so the reason we're tight about it now, where I do plan to use it, because I love audio and video questions, the authenticity of it, and especially the video questions, is that we're going to say, hey, we're going to talk about zoomOSC, or we're going to talk about something next week. You can submit audio questions and video questions before the day of the event. So there's like a cutoff 2 days before. If you want to say your question, you can put it in there. But then we'd still let people vote on it. We'd still pick the ones that are best, because the reason that the voting, I know that voting drives people crazy, but the reason you have people vote is so people start being conscious that they're asking a question representative for everyone. Like they have to be conscious of, they're not just self-conscious of like, what do I want to know? It's what do we want? You constantly want to move an audience to what do we want to know, as opposed to what do I want to know. I have a unique view of what we need to ask because of whatever I'm working on. Like all these different questions that come in from from everyone that's in the group, it gives us this incredible view of virtual production, of education, of everything. So that personal experience is important, but we want to think about how does that relate to everybody else, and I think that's the problem with audio in general and video questions. I've said this before, but when we did it for the World Bank, 12 years ago was the first question system that I built, and the World Bank used it. And then it was like within a year, they just stopped doing any mics in their meetings. Like it was just like, this goes so much faster, and forcing people to think in 300 characters. Sometimes that's a problem on our end because they didn't say enough and we don't know what they mean. But 90% of the time it means the show runs faster because of that. So, but I do agree with you that it's the authenticity and the realness and the completeness of a question can be much better. It's just that's why we don't do it in a live show, is because it's difficult. Next question.
It comes to us from Laura Thompson, our friend in Beaumont, Texas. And Laura, we hope you're warm, dry, and safe since you're in Texas. It comes a thought exercise for our educators. I've always thought that technology was a great way to level the playing field for students with disabilities, but I'm beginning to find out that students are not being identified as having disabilities as easily. Any thoughts on that?
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah. There's two thoughts on this. One is that there are a certain range of disabilities that this is to say nothing of whether the fact that you think they're real or not, but that manifest themselves more strongly in a classroom setting where you have to be sitting in a room for 7 hours a day with everyone else. And if you are at home and you have the flexibility, you might still have whatever form of disability it is, but it's not going to manifest itself and be apparent when you have the flexibility to get up or walk around or do your assignments at home. And so, whether that means it needs to be identified is, a separate question that I think we can wrestle with. And, in general, like identifying it would be good, right? But, I think for some of these students, there's a whole class of things that because of the remote instruction, because of the asynchronous nature, or the flexibility that instructors are providing, those things can, sort of just be naturally accommodated, and they don't become as readily apparent. And I think that's a great thing because that means, accommodations in a disability sense are a remediation. They are not, in an ideal world, they're not our first approach to solving the problem, right? They are trying to come up with a second solution for something that couldn't work naturally. And so that's, I think that's one approach or one reason. And otherwise, I think that it is just the aspect of, educators get trained, ideally, not everyone, but there's usually some amount of training of how you identify these disabilities. Being in a room with 30 students or hundreds of students, and just needing to pick up on different signals that don't exist. So some of this might be helping parents, in productive ways identify things as well. But on the other hand, with technology, we probably have a lot of additional signals that we could use, but we just have to figure out how to do it safely and equitably and without jumping to conclusions that don't exist from the data. So, I would much rather take this slowly rather than using imperfect data to jump to conclusions about students when we don't fully understand, the personal context behind that data.
Roscoe?
I think if the limitations of Zoom actually mask the disabilities, I think that's great. I think I want these students to be on equal playing grounds. I don't, if a child's in a wheelchair, great. I don't need to know that. They're on Zoom. And I want them to be treated as an equal. I did post an article in the Discord Education General. It's a gal who's the title of the article is, I actually enjoy teaching on Zoom. She was at a college level, but if you read through the comments, it's incredible the number of people that said the child who would have been in the back corner of my room and not participating at a high level because they're shy or because they, are blooming through Zoom and blooming through this interaction. So I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's the current situation has put a lot of pressure on kids that were doing well, and now they're not adjusting well to that process. And so you have a lot of parents that are upset that their kids are getting lost, but there's an equal number of kids. I don't know if equal, but there's another group of kids that are doing much better in this environment than they were. So, we only hear about the ones that are having trouble because, again, they were A students, and my son was one of them. I had to get him back into something physical because he just didn't I couldn't figure out a way to get him to engage, so he just, but I know that personally I would have thrived, in high school. And I mean, I did okay in high school and got A's, but I, it was a very painful experience, for me, and I definitely didn't like it. And it was something I had to put up with. And, and I think when we think about disabilities, I do think that figuring out a format that works for kids, I think hopefully we have some flexibility in the future where we get to a point where kids can choose which way they go, and and not have it be one way or the other. So, because, as someone who was diagnosed very early on as both dyslexic and ADD, I take ADHD or whatever, I take that as an offense, because I think of it as a superpower. So I think that little square minds are having trouble with the big mind that goes and then stretches out and grabs onto all this stuff. And so they don't know how to deal with that, but the thing is that it was, you put me in if every once in a while the teacher would let me go and I would just go, and sometimes that was very scary for the teacher, and it was like a little nuclear, whatever that was in there. But I always preferred hyperactive as a kid. Back then, that's what it would be called, hyperactive, and then they slowly, as I was growing up, turned it into some other thing. But I felt that was a better term because I was doing a lot more. And so anyway, but I think that the reason I bring that up is that I think this environment is much better for me. It's why we're doing this every day, is because I enjoy this, the stimulus of this, and the fact that it's going in lots of different directions, and it's, all those other things. And so I don't think that, I think school is really painful for a lot of kids. And so hopefully they're going to be able to get multiple formats, Emily, and then Roscoe, and then John, and Michael.
Yeah, I was just going to say, from one side, it's great if students can learn to self-advocate and or have the option to do multiple things. And I think pre-pandemic, a lot of teachers were like, oh, I don't know how to use whatever, Google Classroom or Word or Keynote or whatever. And so they were like, we can't use that because I don't understand it. Whereas now there's a lot more ability to choose what works for you. And so if you want to talk your paper instead of typing your paper because you lose your thoughts when you're typing, there's all different ways that you can do that. And I think, for the middle school, high school kids, they do become self-advocates for what works for them. And then they can at least stand up to them for themselves with a teacher who may not be as flexible. And so I think some of those things could be really good going forward from this.
I think that
having that choice.
I think that the 10 years from now, I think that one of the things that'll come out of this is schools will no longer be geographically limited. Right now it's all very much like you're in your own school. The problem is you have a limited sample of kids that are interested in that thing or want a certain thing. I think that you're going to end up with an explosion of schools, whether they're public or charter or private, that provide the service that you can, hey, I'm really interested in STEM, and those schools, but my little town and, wherever Pennsylvania doesn't have really a good program for that, but there's an online program I can join and I can go to school there and not have to interact with the school that doesn't provide the services that I need, and I'm not limited to my geographic region. Roscoe.
Yeah, and the second part of Laura's question, which may be what's important, is that because of the limitations of Zoom, students that do have disabilities that do need to be identified because it will affect their learning as they go through the system, they may not be easily identified. And therefore, we need experts, or we need other kinds of testing. If we stay in this model, we need a way to evaluate those students. And I think that's critical too. There may be a skill set that we haven't developed yet.
Well, and again, I think also though, when we get rid of geographic limitations, I think that they can get to the people that they, that would be that make the most sense for them, even though their school district might not be able to provide that locally. John?
At the higher ed space, we see the inequity. Some schools are very good at identifying students with learning disabilities, and they come to the campus and they automatically go to our student services. Many students did not come from an educational setting, either with advocate parents or their school district, and they don't know that they have a potential service on the campus that could help them. So it was important on our campus to alert faculty that the services existed. And since I was identified with a learning disability, lots of times the students would come talk to me. I'm a dyslexic. I feel people spell words the same way every time are not very creative.
Limited. Yeah, they're not very creative. I've said that for the last 40 years. You know, you only can spell a word one way. I mean, come on, Michael.
I'm curious about, though, all the electronic devices, you know, kind of causing that distraction, which I know some people are interpreting as hyperactivity, ADHD, whatever you want to call it. Does this kind of thing potentially, you know, push that even forward, or is this something that we might miss in these children? Because I personally have a situation with one of my grandchildren right now in this, and
well, I'm going to argue that the problem with you're right. Like, for instance, my house, my kids, the Wi-Fi that my kids have access to is extremely limited. It's just around the amount of times they need to go to school, and just the amount of times they need to go a little further than that. So literally, they don't have internet access half the day, you know, and it's specifically because I just felt like they just were going down these paths that they don't need to go down, you know, in that area. And so I agree with you to the extent that parents have to have more control over how much time they get access to that stimulus, because it's just like a drug that they can't stop. The other thing is, but what I will say against the other side of that is, I think that we're, as human beings, electronics allow us to absorb information faster and faster and faster. And the problem with school is that school is not keeping up, you know, with that speed of data acquisition. You know, like when I first started listening to books, we talked about this last week, listen to them at 1x. Now I listen to them between 1.75 and 2x, because my brain has gotten good at absorbing at that speed. And it's actually easier for me to listen to something. I cannot listen to something at 1x and remember anything. But at 1.5 or 1.75x, it saturates my mind to a point where I can't think about anything else. I just think about the book. And my retention is much higher at a higher speed than it was at the lower speed. And the problem is that classrooms are running at 0.5x most of the time. You know, so what you end up with is a bunch of students that are really, like, they're used to YouTube and TikTok coming at a really fast rate and giving them an enormous amount of data, and then you go back to really slow, and they're having a hard time shifting down. Jessica?
I just wanted to add that I do teach a lot of students with a variety of disabilities at the higher ed world. And I just wanted to say I agree that it's what I predicted, what I thought some of my students would struggle with in this environment was the complete opposite. The students that succeeded were the ones I thought were going to really go badly. I have like students who English is not their first language. I thought they were going to completely fail in this environment. And those are the ones that are doing better. The ones that were shy, like you said, are doing better. The ones that are allowed to leave their cameras off are doing better. But the ones who I didn't know, you know, because of stigma or whatever, had never advocated for themselves or didn't want to self-disclose their disability, those are the ones we've lost. And I think I agree with you, Alex, in the idea that with these multiple platforms, and Emily, when you said now that we have so many different ways and tools to access people with their multiple abilities and their multiple intelligences, and seeing that on a spectrum, we're going to do a lot better. It's not saying that this is a panacea or that we're going to not miss somebody, but I think we're going to have a better access to it and less stigma, because there's going to be more tools that teachers are going to know how to use to reach the students who have the highest disabilities.
Yeah. James, and then Daniel, and then Michael.
Yeah, one of the things that I've just become aware of is we've always talked about the digital divide, but there's a second digital divide where there are students that don't always know how to use the technology. They don't know how to use those things. And I don't know that that has anything to do with their IEPs or anything like that. It's just some students are better at using technology than others. I've been teaching for 20 years and everybody thinks that kids know how to use cell phones really well. And it's like, no, they don't. If it's not the two apps that they use, most of them can't do anything. So, you know, how to identify those kids that are I teach at a continuation school. And so I think a lot of the kids that I have are in that second digital divide.
Right.
That's why they're there.
Absolutely. Daniel?
Yeah. So I consider myself to have grown up at a great time because my kindergarten teacher played us books on vinyl. And then in third grade, our school got their first MacBooks and then. So I have seen education technology evolve in K through 12, and it was fascinating. And I had a great school system that compared to a lot of others when I, got to college and realized what the rest of the world was like. Oh, kids don't have technology and they don't have programs and curriculum that help you use the technology. So my point being, and this is stepping back, for those who do not have Alex Lindsay as a father and knows and has the technical ability to make sure they're not on YouTube when they're supposed to be in school, if that's a lesson that you can instill early at the same time that you're teaching them that a highlighter is a tool that helps you take notes, and this is how you grip your pencil, and this is the best way to use technology so that you can, get good grades and achieve and enjoy school.
All right, go ahead, Michael, and then Cara.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's, a lot of just challenges here, and I think the point is, how do we know we're not missing students? Because it depends all on how we define a disability too, right? And one definition is, it's a mismatch between an individual's needs and the environment. And what we're finding is if we shift the environment, there are a lot of things that we could classify as disabilities that are, no longer necessary to classify as because we've built a better environment. And I think the question is, for, not just school, but as students continue on, if they have a better environment for themselves, when they go off and work in the future, or they get, whatever hobbies or X, Y, or Z, like, will they have those same affordances? And it seems actually, whether it's for reasons of cost or just flexibility, that, this, the ability to do things remotely or through Zoom will be, a huge asset, in the professional world as well. And so I think there's a lot of hope there that, some of these things we just won't have to classify as being, a thing that needs fixing with students, because that's often how a disability gets treated, even if it's not intended to be that way. The other thing, though, is I think it is just, one of the things that a lot of us are finding is it's really hard to distinguish between a student who's absent and a student who needs help. And I think a lot of this might just be that we have not yet built the tools that we need, and we haven't had the experience of, years of teaching online for the most part in terms of how we identify and connect with those students. And so, my hope is that the more that we have either flexible or online models that, just most of us are managing so many things in addition to the so many things that we're already managing in a classroom, that it was really easy for someone to slip through the cracks just because it's new. And knowing, just getting things set up, means that you're not as aware if a student or two is not present for one day. Or so I think hopefully going forward, we'll have just, we'll figure out what those indicators are.
And I know we talk about kids falling through the cracks, but kids were falling through the cracks before too.
Yeah.
Like, we have to remember that in the physical environment, they were falling through the cracks. They were getting bullied. They were getting, there was a lot of, they were, getting all kinds of other things that were going on. There's a group of people that, were falling through that already. And so it might be a different group, maybe the same group, but a lot of times it's a different group that's falling through. And so I think that we also have to, again, I still think that we're going to end up with first a heterogeneous mix of education, but I think that ultimately it's just not going to be geographically constrained, and students will move to where it makes the most sense for them, as opposed to where they were born or where their house is. Cara?
Yeah, there's a course that I'm helping teach for nurses, and I'm really enjoying it because I'm learning so much about different approaches that they have with patient care. And one of the things that came up this week was validation therapy, which is used for patients with dementia. And what that means is going to their reality. And I think it has some application in education because we can often try to pull people into our reality, whether it's that they're communicating a way that we don't understand or that we don't get. And so this whole week, I've actually been using it for just about everything I do in my life, is like going to wherever that person's reality is and trying to step into their reality rather than pulling them into my own reality. Yeah. So look it up and see what you think.
Depending on where I'm teaching, my metaphors shift. You know, like when I'm teaching, like when I'm in Africa, I have African metaphors. When I'm in a rural area, I have country metaphors. When I have, you know, like I change and I'm constantly thinking about how I'm going to say those things that, using those things, and it makes it, the goal is to engage. I don't hit 100%, but to your point though, I think it's really effective. Go ahead, John.
Kara, I love that idea. I'm going to have to do a new reality to my wife to explain why I need to take over a second bedroom for a studio for my new e-glass. But I wanted to follow up with what you said, Alex, is that a lot of these issues and challenges existed before. The digital inequity, the lack of dealing with students with special needs, the bandwidth challenges between the haves and have-nots. I think what's happened is it's become much more obvious and more documented now. And maybe that's a good thing to have out of this, that some of these things will be addressed now that more of the public see it.
Go ahead, Sky, real quick.
Well, and people have died since people began. So it's not that it's not happened. It's just that we're now instantly made aware of it. And this communication device is making us more aware than the Pony Express did.
Next question.
Comes from panelist Tony Mobley, who got the most votes with a kind of tech/education question. What might be some education use cases for the new ATEM Mini Extreme, or should an educator use the cellular smaller ATEM?
Go ahead, Roscoe, Kent, and then Michael.
Yeah, I've run into a few people that just have access to too many computers, too many video sources, and this would be perfect for them. But otherwise, a small one is wonderful if you're going to get into this world, but it isn't a necessity. It is for online, but not in the classroom.
I wouldn't teach without mine anymore. Like, I just be clear, like in the room, out of the room, I wouldn't show up without an ATEM. Like I wouldn't interact, because the problem is that I have my media and I want random access to that media, and I want to be able to draw on top of all of it. And so for me, and I admit that big stack of ATEMs that I built was largely to solve what the Extreme solves, which is that I want, 3 or 4 cameras, and I want some computer inputs, and I want, I want those things. So at 8 inputs, I'm pretty close to what I need. And so the thing is that whether I'm in a classroom or not, that's why I actually stopped teaching in person, was because I would just come in over Skype. People would say, do you want to teach? And I said, yeah, I'm happy to teach as long as you have a Skype connection. And then I'll just come in over that, because I had my whole setup at my house or my office, and I can teach much more effectively from there than I could ever. Like, once you build out that system, all I can say is that you look at your blackboard or whiteboard or whatever as like caveman. Like, it's just, it's so slow, and if I want to have, because I can go through my PowerPoint, I'm a Keynote or PowerPoint, but I have Keynote running, but I can hit a button and now I'm in another app that I'm talking about. And then I can hit another button and I can show you a close-up of a camera. Then I hit another button and I can keep on going back and forth between all of those. And on any one of those, I can draw on top of it. And when you get to that level, you're starting to catch back up to the YouTube/TikTok generations, data acquisition. And you cannot do that in analog. Cannot do it in an analog format. You cannot keep up with YouTube and TikTok and the speed at which the brain's coming. You will need to use electronics in the future, or it will not work. Kent?
Yeah, the thing I liked about the Extreme was that it has a headphone jack, which I don't know if you want to pay $700 for that or whatever it is, $1,000. But that's the one thing that's missing, But I'm the same way with the ATEM Mini, that I was sharing with a friend like my setup and stuff, and I'm like, everything here is replaceable except my ATEM Mini. It's like I can use a different camera, I can use a different mic, but if this thing dies, I'm driving to a guy's store in the middle of the night and I'm going to break in and steal one. So just a warning on that.
Good. And we're going to Michael, and then we're going to move on because we're running out of time.
Yeah, I think for me, like more inputs is useful as a piece of flexibility. Just I will find that I want to try something out, and not having to redo my setup is like a nice thing there. But for me, I think the bigger thing that rather than just the inputs was every once in a while, I find that there's just a certain limitation with, like right now I'm using a green screen, but and if I want to put myself on top of my slides, that works well. But if I also want to scale myself or build, a little bit of an additional animation, that's where things like SuperSource and the second keyer come in. And it's true that you could do all of that in OBS, but on a Mac, it's horrendously unstable. And just having a button press is nice. The other thing is the two USB ports, especially if you are doing something like getting the ISO where you might use those recordings later, having the webcam and the recording at the same time is going to be a hugely beneficial thing that is just so much easier and just gives me like that sense of backup. I mean, I bought a hyperdeck so that I could automate and do some of that. And when I think about the cost of other things, like it actually, I don't know what I'm going to sell yet or replace. But right now it'd be purely additive, but it actually works out to be quite economical compared to the 3 or 4 devices that I've been using at the same time.
Next question.
Francisco Manriquez of Sonoma, California says, for those of you who have already experienced hybrid models, what are some of the do's and don'ts for a high school going hybrid in April?
Go ahead, Ken.
Use as much asynchronous as you can. Videotape as much as you can, make as many videos and have those available for the students to watch before and after. That's the hardest thing, is trying to keep all of that stuff real time. And the flip thing is, I think, key to if you're going to do it.
Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, flipping would be great. And also planning the whole week out and posting it at the beginning of the week if you can, so that your students know exactly what's going to happen on what day and at what time. With hyperlinks, you can do it with, like a 1-slide hyperlink. It could be a PDF, whatever system you're using. Just make it as easy as possible for them to know where they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to be doing for the whole week, not day to day, because that's when you start losing some of our kids.
Good, Michael.
Yeah, and I would say that especially if you're in the model where you're trying to record that class session, I would just really spend a few hours making sure that when you're in the room and half your students are not, you're just thinking about what you need to capture to give them good experience. And this is where I think something like an ATEM Mini Pro in every classroom on our campus, which is not cheap, but like a relatively affordable investment compared to other things, would make a huge difference. And you don't need to go that far, but I do think can I just get a mic for myself and do simple screen recording and make sure that that's captured and get in the habit of having that content such that if someone can't be there, there's an asynchronous model, but there's also some kind of recording. The other thing, this is true live, in person, and hybrid as well, but always be in the habit of repeating questions when you get them from students, because when people are more distributed, that repetition matters 10 times more than it is even already useful to do as an in-classroom practice.
One of the things we've talked about during the week, I don't think we've talked about this week, but I've been really had a fundamental change in hybrid thought process over last weekend. And that what we're now pushing to a lot of our clients since I flipped it, as I've had all these meetings about meetings, is for me, a hybrid now, and I think this is going to be the future of the hybrid, is not a physical event that's being shared with a virtual audience. It's a virtual event that's being shared in the physical world, which means that the speaker is in a studio or their home or whatever. And so what you can have the students come. For us, it'll be events. The event, people are walking in, they're just going to watch a screen. And they're all going to be, because you now have much more controlled audio, much controlled video. You have access to more stuff. You don't have to do that. And, but the thing is that then everybody's on the same playing field. You could still have interaction with the classroom. They can't walk around, obviously, in the classroom, but you can have interaction with the classroom and interaction online. And it's seamless for the teacher, and it'll be more seamless for the students. And it'll actually be easier to hear the teacher, through speakers than it was in the classroom. So I think that I believe that that's going to end up being the future. Like it's not going to be I think it's so much more efficient. And when we talk about this hybrid thing where kids could be attending school from home or attending in person or all those other things, this fixes all those problems in a lot of ways. John and then Jessica, pretty quick because we're running out of time.
Yeah, for us, we're beginning to talk about at the university what we're going to do in the fall, hopefully, but we're going to have reduced numbers. So classes maybe that will be hybrid because only part of the class will be able to be there. And we've come up with some models where if you're in the classroom, you're really part of the presentation. You're the representative of people who are watching. So as long as the students know they're just not normal students, that they're part of the show. And we also came up with a buddy system that somebody who's physically in the classroom should be buddied with a person who's remote through chat and stuff. So what we're trying to figure out is how to make sure the people who are remote don't become second-class citizens, which is very hard to beat because for faculty members, if somebody's in the room, it's hard for them to address their attention to the people remote. But if both the faculty members and the students who are physically there know that they're both focusing on the students who are remote, we're hoping to get the remote students more engaged.
Jessica.
I just wanted to add with I've been teaching hybrid, so getting your IT people on your campus on board with you, understanding your problems and wanting to help you, because this is a huge switch for them as well. And I teach at a really poor community college. It's in fact the lowest funded one in New York State. So we come up with a lot, why I have a bad microphone, for example. So, there's a lot of things that I'm dealing with. I paid for the ATEM Mini Pro out of my own pocket just so I could, move forward with a theater production, but it's because our IT department just isn't prepared for this. I would also say, leaning into something that James said earlier, in addition to all of the asynchronous that Kent said you should have ready to go, have a day of the week where you're going over how to use the asynchronous, because a lot of times they don't know how to do that. And also continue to use a jigsaw method to engage them. If you are having interpersonal learners who are the ones who are struggling the most with this environment, so that jigsaw idea that they have one thing they're looking for that someone else isn't looking for. So they have a responsibility to stay engaged in the classroom. So lots of asynchronous, one synchronous day, where you're going over the asynchronous and having discussions that are jigsaw, I think are the most helpful, in addition to having decent technology, if you can, and get your IT department on board.
Jessica, you're becoming a new superstar in the panel. Came in, yeah. So we hope you keep coming on Saturdays. It's good. That's a great one. And James, it's great to have you coming in. It's great to have your input and your knowledge here. So I think you're the two newer members, and you guys are adding a lot of protein to the discussion. So thanks for coming. And Daniel, it's good to see you as well, as far as coming in. So these are three new folks and Daniel's here earlier, so we already said hi to him. Anyway, next question. We're going to go really fast now because I have to stop at 9, and I apologize. Again, once we get through this training, we won't do any more that are butting up against this, so we have more of a free run. So I apologize for that. Go ahead. Next question.
Ernest Floyd, Bastrop, Louisiana. Ernest asks, I'm working with a Head Start facility to set up virtual learning for students. They purchased 250 Chromebooks and have their own domain. I'm trying to set up Google for Education account and can't seem to get any help from Google. Any advice?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry. We don't have a good answer for that one. I don't know anything about setting that setup. John, real quick.
Reach out to QCUE.org, Computer Using Educators, now called Q, and there are a lot of people who are doing Google Classrooms and will share.
Awesome. Next question.
JJ McKenna, Santa Venetia, California. Have you seen effective ways of providing accommodations to students with IEPs? And are you aware of methods to retest students who are going into higher education?
Probably too deep of a question we can do at the end, at the tail end of this. So let's go to the next question.
Moving along to Sam Downey of Bristol, England. Sam says, as a content creator with autism and epilepsy, an advocate for people with disabilities, I'm glad you're talking about it on office hours today. Tips schools and businesses need to learn about the ADA Act and what else needs to be learned about in that area.
Yep, absolutely. Next question.
Moving on to Stan Chen, our friend from Roseville, California. Is a VR/AR classroom a good idea?
I think that examples of AR and VR as part of a classroom experience is really interesting. AR probably is going to be a little bit easier. I don't think putting people into goggles for a day or an hour or whatever makes any sense at all. I've done a lot of R&D in this area for companies that are doing this. And I'm just saying that it's not a particularly compelling, it's low resolution. It will be eventually great. It's not there yet at all. Emily and Mickey, real quick.
Yeah, we bought the Google Expedition. We bought the headsets and we brought them into classrooms to show kids stuff. And I think, you know, letting kids explore things virtually that they wouldn't be able to see, especially because of location, Great Wall of China, Machu Picchu, whatever it is, that they can actually see it and kind of maneuver their way around it and you can guide it, is really great. That said, they're discontinuing the app. Google is discontinuing the app. So that's not going to be, it's been embedded into the Google Arts and Culture so that students can go and manipulate things in AR and VR. So I think for, you know, supplementary material, it's great. I did hear the one gem I got from Clubhouse this week was wonder.me, which is a website that allows the teacher to move through the room into groups and kids can join bubbles. And it kind of has like a, oh shoot, I forgot the other one that we talked about in here before, where you can kind of move around the room, but it allows you to hear the discussions that are going on organically with the students. And so in that sense of like a virtual classroom, that could be a good workaround. Like Zoom doesn't let you jump into the breakout rooms easily. This actually in proximity, you can move through the room and hear bits of conversation and it goes in and out based on proximity to the group. So I think, you know, that, yeah, it's good for demos. It's good for other stuff. Having a full one, I can't be in it for more than an hour and not lose
Again,
my
I think
mind.
that there's things where you can, again, see something and now it changes the way you think about it by seeing something being in the space. But I don't think that it, you know, but you just want to do it for a moment so you get that reference point and then keep talking about it or discussing it. We have to jump to the other one. I apologize. So we're going to have to close this one up and open the other one. Always such a pleasure to talk to all of you. And I'm really excited. Daniel and James and Jessica, thank you for joining us. I think this is the first time the three of you have been in. So it's been great to have you. Hopefully you come back. We really had a great time getting your input. And thanks to all the educators who show up. It keeps on getting better every week as we talk through this. So anyway, thank you so much. We're going to jump into I'm going to open up the zoomOSC now, and we'll jump into that next conversation.
Have a great week, everybody.
Yeah, see you guys.
Bye-bye.
Awesome.